Hollywood and the politicians who run this country look at America as a bunch of zombies. And so they're saying to the American people, we're here, we're dead, and get used to it. The American zombies. In other words, they're saying to you, Hollywood is saying to you in their movies and television shows, you are a bunch of zombies.
Welcome back, everybody. We are here once again, the One Great Work Warriors, with another roundtable discussion. And this one is going to be, if anything, is going to be interesting, guys, because this is something that I'm looking forward to chatting about. And I hope it's going to get you guys thinking. And this topic is the zombie mindset. Let's go ahead, guys, and kick this off. Chris, let's get into the zombie mindset because this is going to be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, but it's so hard for me to get into the zombie mindset, Rick, because I'm just so alive and awake and curious. But it has not one of my aspects of curiosity my whole life has been trying to understand that aspect I see in so many people around me that don't have that curiosity, that will or that drive to say why, to understand why things are the way they are, to keep asking those questions. And so I'm always trying to encourage folks to look at the deeper aspects of life, to consider the why, and to look at the context of things and look at things from a different perspective. And so I thought to make this show a little bit more fun and unique, we could look at some of the Hollywood and fictional aspects of our society and take them apart and use them as a way to metaphorically look at what's really going on deep down in our culture and in ourselves. And recently, I've been on the topic on the End Evil podcast of symbology, of studying symbolism, the study of actually looking into symbolism. And this symbolism in the zombie motif that we see all through Hollywood, all through comic books, all through paperback books, it's so prevalent that it's mind blowing. And you have to ask yourself, why are people so fascinated with the zombie thing? Why would they keep watching this sort of disgusting play of, these undead creatures trying to eat the brains out of the alive creatures? It's a strange fascination and it's a strange obsession. And we're going to really get deep into that, why that is, in this episode. And I'd like to hear all these guys' perspectives on this whole idea. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it to my man, Derek.
How's it going in California? Bonjour from France. And geez, it's hard for me not to like hold back a lot of laughter thinking about this stuff, and because yeah, I don't know, like just like the phonetics of the word, and and just the sluggish mind state that I felt like, like a lot of us have already been there, and it's not always a thing to laugh about, of course, and like this video is not to be like punching down on folks per se. That's not the intention of this video. Yet it's gonna be brought up because shit needs to be clowned out. Like there is that element of comedy where we can like there's that humiliation factor where people can kind of like understand like their head is in their ass and kind of try to remove that from within. So Hollywood. I'll be going over there maybe next month, and I'll be hanging out with Chris. But so anyways, something that I've noticed, and we spoke about this in a couple of videos already, of just how like there's like the flavors of programming. Like we did the shitcoms and all that stuff, and there's like subgenres within subgenres. And yeah, like Chris, I've been really fascinated as well, like in a uneasy like feeling about it the whole time, of just like what is the fascination of people like drawn to horror movies. And I'm thinking like especially with women, because I've noticed there's like decent, popularity amongst a good amount of women at actually like people that I know or heard about or you just like see around, whatever, right? I'm sure you guys can relate or observation or what have you. But and what have we to like gander across the movie cinemas that I haven't been to in years. I haven't watched a movie in a long ass fucking time. I'll watch some movie reviews just to, like, get the slightest pulse of whatever the fuck's, being churned out in the fucking bullshit sludge factory of unbelievable, unconscious minutia. But anyways, not to ramble on, but yeah, what I noticed is that, like within the horror, genre, there's like subgenres and like this zombie subgenre is blown the fuck up, and we have these fucking series and like how many movies per year, what's the quota these days? You got your cop movies, your comedy movies, your rom-com, and whatever the action movies, superhero. Everyone wants to be a superhero and identify whatever the fuck, like it's people don't understand just like allegories and archetypes of fucking attributes of consciousness anyways. And what we're talking about right now is just how there's been such a dumbing down and quickening of that in relation to how movies you see, like the premiere movies of zombies, they're kind of slow and like more deranged, and like you could see people being able to scurry around them easier. And what do we have today? Like it's like zombies on fucking steroids or some shit. They're climbing walls and whatever the fuck. So I there's like interesting things to like observe and correlate and pick apart, and that's what we're gonna do in this discussion tonight. And yeah, just like why another zombie movie? Like they just want to make it more gory. We have more, technology, CGI, even though like have you guys noticed the trend of, like higher technology and weaker dialogue and like quality of fucking movies and all that shit? So yeah, there's that, and just like why are folks like Stephen King so overly curious on like like their whole life is dedicated to horror? What is he like produce like 1,000 fucking novels and stories on this shit? Like like is he possessed by any kind of fucking entities? What's the fucking over curiosity of this? And do we actually see proper allegories of how like mankind has just become overly saturated with trying to play God and whatever the fuck, and created this inverted Ouroboros or whatever the fuck, and like there's like this inverted human, and that's kind of what we mentioned with the symbolism, Chris. The inverted pentagram of where the quintessential human being head is in the earth. It's supposed to be at that stellar level, harnessing the elements with the feet firmly planted on earth. But dark forces have inverted that, and how many programs have conditioned people to actually live this out, which is unfortunate. And this is part of the reason why we're doing a video to encourage people and light a fire up people's asses to burn that shit in the alchemical athanor. But yeah, I'm gonna ramble on too much, so I'm gonna pass it off to whoever. I'm not gonna name names, but whoever's feeling it.
I'll jump in because I've also seen a increase with the whole zombie hysteria, and I want to say, like I've always seen it as a symbolic representation of things. But like Derek said, like you had the earlier '60s or like the '40s, '50s, and '60s zombies who move slow. Now you have the modern zombie, like who has strength. And I want to say, that's they're like it's symbolic of like the double speak of ignorance is strength, because like the zombie is symbolic of a apathetic person, a slow-witted person, and you can see the degradation in consciousness, especially with modern, a man and woman, and how they become so ignorant that most people think that being ignorant is a form of strength. and true intelligence, isn't really cared for. So, like you throw out this notion that ignorance is strength. So let's break down what the word zombie means. That way we all can get a better understanding of what we are, talking about. How relating to the dead. That's the first definition. The second definition is uh, authority figures. That's a lesser known, modern version of a zombie. And then you can also say a reanimated corpse. Figuratively, you're talking about a apathetic person, so a person who's lost their emotional connection, or you can say a person who's lost their spiritual connection, their spiritual essence, that human potentiality of spirit, of care, of being able to feel. And that's why I've always associated the symbolic, figurative, narrative of a zombie to the toxic mind virus of moral relativism. Because when you look at what a zombie does, it is a creature who has no intelligence, who doesn't think, who has no spiritual essence and doesn't care. And therefore, they feed on other human beings. So that is equivalent and symbolic of the whole dog eat dog world that people try to project in society. And, by just abusing and taking advantage of other people, you are symbolically eating away not just at your own spiritual essence, but at theirs. Their ability to care because you are perpetuating trauma. You are causing more trauma, then therefore that traumatic cycle, continues and continues to get worse and worse. And as you are stepping on other people, you are symbolically eating them. As they say in a dog eat dog world, do as you please. Um, as long as as long as I don't get caught, hell, I can go and steal from someone. Hell, I can go and murder, rape, just pretty much do whatever I want. The whole satanic mindset. And that's what I really see the main allegorical um meaning behind the whole zombie mindset. It is the Watiko mindset. It is the mindset of the takers. It has been described so many times, but it's really just the negation of empathy. Like you have lost your ability to care. And that's like why you see him eating of the human flesh, because human flesh is literally one of the most unhealthiest things to put in your body. It will literally start to break down your body, because it's so dense. And people who have eaten human flesh, you can see how, like how the body starts to, like, help degrade. Well, symbolically, what is man doing? It is consuming toxins that are so unhealthy that is literally eroding our ability to think, our ability to feel, and our ability to care. So, how the zombie is all about consuming. Well, is that not what human beings are doing? We are just consuming. So to consume something means to destroy, to use up, to eat, to waste. Well, the more and more we consume, not only are we, poisoning our own body, but our environment, and also, the planet. And when you look at like any zombie movie, no matter where it was, like all of the areas that the zombies were located were always in like bad conditions, bad health environments, bad areas, because all they do is consume. They just take, it's like a very low level, animalistic, mindset. And then too, when you look at the whole notion of the zombie, you can only really become a zombie if there is a penetration of your inner kingdom. And what I mean by that is there was always some kind of virus, or there was always some kind of, blood being taken in, or you would have to be bitten. So, hell, again, there's some outside force or entity that penetrates your inner, kingdom. And that's representative of a toxicology, a moral relativism, because in society, we have all this external forces who are injecting these zombie-like ideas, these mind viruses, and once it penetrates our inner kingdom, aka our mindset, then we start to poison our own selves, and then it starts to poison the soul, and it starts to spread throughout the body. Then, therefore, is projected outwardly in the form of wrong action and violations within natural law, then also we go and teach these same zombie-like toxic ideologies to our kids. So we are spreading that virus symbolically, just as though they would do in the whole zombie movies. Except we're not biting people, but we're spreading this mind virus, and it's penetrating their inner kingdoms, and then therefore that's how this mind virus continues to spread. So I always see it as a symbolic representation of moral relativism. And I'm done.
I'll build on it, Brandon. I love it. I like what all you guys are saying, and I definitely will build on what Brandon is saying. Is he said a couple things that I think is really important. That you're saying the people, you lose the ability of care, and I would also add on top of that that when I think of zombies, I think of things that don't think. Um, they're just driven, and so I kind of came at this from the angle of how I've always seen like when I'm watching, if I'm seeing a protest or I'm seeing like riots, or even back just a few years ago with mask wearing and getting the shots, and what's even probably more relevant now is the elections. This is when I start to see these groups of people forming. That's when I start thinking of this. What comes to me is the zombie horde. That's what I think of. I always say to myself, like, God, look at this. It's like a horde of people that just are getting together, and it's just this mass group of people. And that's kind of where my mind goes when I see that. And so I always think like zombies and like then modern society, like how do they kind of um intermingle? And believe it or not, I've seen most zombie movies. I've seen a lot of the series, and my logo is a zombie, but I'm not a huge zombie fan. Believe it or not, it's not my first go-to for something. And there's a long story why I got the logo. But anyways, I'll have to tell it sometime. But that's what I'm just saying, is that I'm not a huge fan of it, but I do, that is what I think of when I see these big groups of people. And then it leads into, for me, the zombies, that they signify the dangers of collectivism and then groupthink, because that's when you start to see how people start just thinking as a group, which to me is so dangerous, and for a lot of different reasons. Um, because what do they like? Think about that. Like, what do they represent? Like, zombies to me, they represent the loss of critical thinking. They, uh, it's more leading by emotion and how you feel. It's this drive, like, you're not really, there's no critical thinking going on. That's another thing I think of. It's like this need, this emotion, and I think a lot of people get wrapped up into that when I speak about these things that I just brought up. When it comes to like the election now, when it comes to back what was going on with the mask wearing and riot, like all these things I just said, riots and that. Like, that's what I think of. That there's no real. It's more led by emotion, and what I find really interesting is I watch a lot of interviews where you see people that will go like man on the street, and they will go into these groups, these large groups, and they start interviewing people. And I love it when they do. And they kind of ask they ask the typical questions, and then they get the knee-jerk reaction. But I love it when you see the odd really good person that does these type of interviews, and they start going a little, digging a little deeper and harder, and start asking tougher questions. And 9 times out of 10, the person cannot even really give them a great answer. They end up usually walking away frustrated or getting mad because they can't answer it. They're there. I don't think, a lot of the times I think they're there because it's the popular thing to do, or it's making them feel a certain way. They want to be part of a group. But when you really drill down into it, they don't know why they're there. Like, they don't, maybe they don't even really believe what they're there for. They're just part of this group. That's what I find interesting. So um, the last thing I'll say is too is when I think of zombies too and what's going on, is that a lot of it's usually goal oriented. The goal is all that matters, and then you are basically conditioned to follow without reason, and you give up your individual. You're giving, what are you giving up? You're giving up your individual thought. If you have a certain goal that you're trying to achieve, and it doesn't matter how you get to that goal, then ethics certainly are going out the window in a lot of the cases. Morality might be given up and put aside, because all it is that goal, that the group has this goal to reach, and it doesn't matter how they get to it, who gets in the way, who gets stepped on, and that's all that matters. So um yeah, and then I think about what steers it, like what steers this has to be steered, and it's steered perfectly. And we see that in the news, basically, if you want to call it that. It's nothing but lies, but the news, you see them steering it, and certainly 1,000% social media. You look at any of these platforms like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, name them, X, you see it being steered, and that is what they use. It is definitely being steered, and it's a group. It's just this. I just see this mob mentality, and it's a very, as I said, collectivism and groupthink, and that's so dangerous. So that's where I'll end, and you guys can build on that and give me your thoughts. But that's kind of what I think about when I think of zombies in the modern day. When I see these large groups, and I think a lot of them don't even know why they're there, or even truly believe in what they are there for, because of it being engineered so and steered. And I'll pass it on to whoever wants to add on to that.
Uh, I'll go. Yeah, when it comes to zombies, and you guys brought up this topic, it's like I don't know much about zombies. I never really liked that kind of genre of like horror movies and stuff, so I never really thought too much about zombies, except for like why the hell do people like zombies? I could see people driving around with zombie bumper stickers, and my friend's ex-wife, when they were married, she had a license plate that said "Die Zombie," and I was like, "Why does she have a license plate that's?" And I asked her, but I don't even understand what she's like. Why? That was a long time ago. But like, my question is like Walking Dead came out. I was like, I'm like, why do people like this so much? Like, this is entertainment. Like, I don't find this entertaining. Just watching people eat people, and then they turn into like Walking Dead, right? But I started to think about it more, and like a lot of stuff like Brandon was saying, this whole metaphorical thing, and that I think when people are watching the show, they're identifying with the protagonists in the movies or the show, but it seems like subconsciously they don't realize they're really identifying with the zombies, like, and that's the trick, a programming trick being played on them. So, if you get a little deeper and you think about it, I just never really thought about it except like, why the hell is this entertaining? So then that's like another thing is the metaphorical, like I always would use the term sheeple, but now I see, oh, zombies is the same thing as sheeple, except zombies look more like people, right? So today I was even walking through the supermarket, and I was just like pretending everyone was zombies. It kind of like we have their phones and everything, and just there's a lot of like people who just are off in supermarkets and Walmarts. I bet you could walk through any Walmart in America and pretend people are zombies. If you're like us, it would be easy for you to see them. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't have too much more to say about it except that it's not something I really ever thought about too much, but it totally makes sense how it's metaphorical. There's a whole zombie thing. So I'll pass it to you, Jerry.
Thanks, Jim. I'd like to ask you what you learned when we were learning about zombies this month, but I'll wait until our meeting. So I just want to touch on what every one of you said, which was spectacular. Like you guys just blew my mind away with everything, the moral relativism, with being off. Because I feel like going to Walmart, like you're just instantly hit with that programming, that radio music, people walking like zombies. I mean, they just consume food, the GMOs, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe they'll even show them their Vax card just to get in. I mean, I'm vaccinated, unfortunately. I need to do something about it, but yeah, it's very easy to see a zombie. I might be surrounded by zombies right now. It's a scary thing. But I just want to touch on the correlation between zombies and drug addicts because I feel like that's prevalent in my life right now with known ones. So I think there's a familiarity with it which is astonishing. So, as I was doing my research, I came across this drug called xylazine. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Xylazine, and that is a non-opioid sedative or animal tranquilizer. And this drug is being mixed in with fentanyl. So, the drugs come in, and fentanyl is mixed with, I don't know, heroin and cocaine. And, people are taking these drugs and they get hooked on it. And this is linked to uh, deaths, uh, people overdosing themselves. And when people use the Ixilazin, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, it causes sedation, difficulty breathing, dangerously low blood pressure, slowed heart rate, wounds can become infected, and it causes severe withdrawal symptoms. So, yeah, they use this to enhance effects of other drugs like heroin or cocaine, and it's a bad drug. And I think Jim shared a picture of Philadelphia. That's people are hooked on it there, and you literally have people, their heads are basically touching the ground, like you mentioned, Derek, with the inversion of the what's it called, the human body. And it's a real thing. It's scary. And you know the drug increases its value because it's so potent. And these drug users, they, as soon as they regain consciousness, they're so hooked that they want the next round. So it's like a non-ending cycle. And it's scary, man. How drugs make people zombies. And I just wanted to share also the metaphorical similarities, right? Used in literature or pop culture, um, illustrating the effects of addiction. So there's the loss of control, which both a drug addict and a zombie can be seen as having a lost autonomy. The addict is controlled by cravings, and the zombie is controlled by an insatiable hunger, usually for flesh or brains. And I know we touched on how the zombies, the old ones, just wanted the brains, right? And I actually came across this one meme that there's a zombie trying to eat someone's brain, and he said, "I believe in flat Earth," and he was like, "Oh hell no!" So like to me, what that represents is that if you actually, because a flat earther, right, like a believer, first of all, you shouldn't believe in anything except yourself. Like, if you're believing in illusions, like you're a zombie. So, like, zombies don't eat other zombies, is my point. And then another similarity is a mindlessness, like Rick mentioned, and deterioration. And the drug that I talked about, it actually basically makes your skin zombie-ish because your flesh actually rots. It's disgusting. And I'm sorry for anybody going through that. They need help. And the obsessive need. Just as zombies are consumed by their hunger, addicts are driven by the overwhelming need for the next fix, often losing sight of everything else in their life. And isolation from society. Drug addiction can lead to isolation from family, friends, and the community, much like zombies, who are often depicted as outcasts from the living. And then, just to end it, violence and desperation. Uh, in extreme cases, addiction can lead individuals to desperate, sometimes violent behaviors to fulfill their cravings, much like zombies attack to satiate their hunger. And this is the reason why I touch on this, because I noticed how easy it can be for a zombie to just be violent, and we have to, draw our boundaries and not get bitten. So I'll pass it to you, Chris.
Thanks, Jerry. That was a little scary, chilling, because all too true. In the physical world, we do see people, especially on the pharmaceutical, I think is much of a bigger issue because it's not seen as, like the drugs, the street drugs, which everybody has been kind of indoctrinated into believing. The pharmaceutical drugs are insidious, and man, that I might come back around to that. But for this particular section, what I really wanted to kind of get into is the psychological aspect of this conversation. Um, like I really like how Jim says, like, it never really appealed to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it is a natural thing that should appeal to. Like, I remember in school, like, there were certain kids that would get really obsessed with like the black fingernails and wearing all black and the music that is very obsessed with death. And I'm not saying that's bad completely, because like I've talked about symbolism, there's a good and a bad way of dealing with things, right? But usually someone, when they're dressing like death, when they're talking a lot about death, when they're thinking a lot about death, it's because something traumatic in their life is making death seem more attractive than life, right? And so I'm not saying it's all bad to dress and act like death. Like, I actually think, like, Jerry, Mexico, the Day of the Dead celebration, and different tribes all through time have had um, a way of greeting death cheerfully, a way of understanding death, because it's one of the most one thing. There's only so many things in life that we know for sure, no matter what, and that's number one, that things are going to change. You know, there's going to be change, and then there's going to be death. So it's one of those realities of life that we're all afraid of, and so it makes sense that it manifests in art, and that we express our concern about death. But this zombie thing kind of takes it to a whole nother level, because it's adding this element of they're dead but they're still alive, they can still move around, they can still attack us, right? And I've always been somebody who's kind of looking at like the strategy, trying to understand why. And so I was thinking about, like, who loves this zombie thing? Who's this working out for? I was like, okay, people that are kind of zombie like, they're going to appreciate zombie like people because they can fit in, right? You got like politicians. If the public act like zombies, that makes it easier for a politician to kind of control them and reel them in, and they're easier to control, right? So politicians like zombies. Military. The military mindset would love zombies. That works out well for them too. Easier to control. You can just kind of. I mean, although in the movies the zombies wind up destroying the military every time, for whatever reason they're getting faster. That's funny how you guys mentioned that with time, the zombie movies. Yeah. Kids who play video games like zombies, right? Why is the fascination with kids? Because you get to shoot the crap out of them, you get to blow them away. And I never remember being sitting inside of a. I love video games and going to an arcade. I've always loved arcades, but I remember it kind of dawned on me one time, like, there's one of those arcades that's got like two submachine guns, and we got two kids there, and they're just blowing away, and what's coming is like these 3D images of people. They're people that are wearing like masks or like biohazard suits, but they're covered up, but you can't really see that they're actually zombies or aliens or whatever. You just know that they're people, and you're just blowing them away. And I'm thinking about how many times have these video games recirculated and encouraged this living vicariously through this sort of opportunity you have to just blow away people uh, with advanced machine guns because you can, and you don't really know if they're the enemy or not because their face is hidden, or you know what I mean. And so the zombies is sort of like this way to live vicariously through doing something horrific that you wouldn't otherwise doing, but oh, in this case it's okay because they're zombies, right? So, and it also, like the thing you were saying last about getting bitten, it reminds me, it's reminiscent of like getting into a gang. Like maybe you have to do a little bit of the crack with the gang members, so that now they beat you up to be in their gang. Like it's getting jumped in, right? That's what happens with the gang of zombies. You get jumped in, and then you're a zombie. It was kind of similar like the vampires, right? And they had their own hierarchy, right? So you're getting sucked into this sort of evil gang, and this evil gang's taken over the world. It's a very true symbol of what has really, happened in our time. And the lifeless, thoughtless brain is like the lifeless and thoughtless ideas that we're following politically. And ultimately, what it really is talking about, the symbol really represents, pure and simple, is slavery. Is people accepting slavery on a mass scale. Because when you think about it, like the zombie motif, if you trace it back to where it really came from, it came back to this ancient witchcraft that was done in, like, with the voodoo, what we've heard of voodoo, right? And there was these supposed witchcraft shamans that would have, like, almost like half dead people around that were like their slaves that would do everything they wanted. They're people they had brought almost to death, buried, and then given this certain type of plant so that they could reanimate them. So these people were just barely around, which is just like what I've seen, what happens to people that take heavy doses of certain drugs, because of, like, antidepressants, for instance, that will do that exact same thing to people where they're shuffling their feet and they can barely move. They're in this messed up state. And that would be done so that they could use them as human mind control slaves. And that is where this term comes from. And it's the dream of the dark occultists. And if you were someone who wanted ultimate power on this planet and you really wanted to control people, like, wouldn't this be your ultimate, like, fantasy to be able to turn people into zombies? And wouldn't you put your money and funds into pharmaceutical companies that create things like that, and find ways to spread it out to the public and give them ideas in their head to make it normalized and desensitize them and keep them in that state of mind where they're at their lowest base desires? And exactly what consumerism is, like the one of the famous zombie movies, they're actually walking through a mall, right? And I wanted to find some footage of people, like, on a Black Friday, and then some footage of one of these zombie movies, and, like, how different is it really? It's almost the exact freaking thing. They're not actually biting each other. Well, some of them they probably freaking are. So, if we reconsider what this is really about, this is about us allowing ourselves to be turned into slaves. And look around. How many people seem to appreciate their own slavery and like it? They like being zombies. And that's why we're like, why do people like zombies and the zombie motif? Why do people like slavery? Why do they like politicians and people owning them? You know? And then it all starts to make sense when you see that truth behind it. So, I'll pass it off.
Hold on, just real quick, because I gotta throw it out there. Chris, you talked about arcades and the whole fake gun, and I'm laughing because I'm like, man, kids nowadays don't know anything about that. Because I'm sure we all do. And then malls, kids don't know nothing about malls these days because you can just order everything online. So
I know they're thinking arcade. What are they talking
yeah,
about?
I know we're showing our ages.
That's some old school shit, man.
Yeah.
But I remember that game, Chris. I remember that exact game. It was such a big game in my town, in our arcade, with that one with those two guns. Interesting.
Yeah, it was right around the time where that famous song from the Cranberries came out. Zombie. Na, na, na. That that's such an international hit.
It's a good song, man.
Every single year I've heard it, multiple times in France, especially working in restaurants where, yeah, they're gonna play some poop culture music, whatever, whether it be a mixture of, good and bad, whatever. Not gonna generalize on that. But that is an interesting song, and I've heard different versions of it, and like through the different cadences and like hearing the lyrics over and over, it's actually quite moving. And what comes to mind is, it's like that divine feminine essence of care. That's I'm wondering where the fuck that is with some of these females that be so like into zombie movies or rooting for the antagonist and that kind of stuff, with that Lilith type of energy. And yeah, there's been such a fucking war on the feminine for fucking eons, unfortunately. Like, for all of us, we're still in the middle of hyper dimensional warfare, and people still don't understand like how the shit is hyping up. And yeah, like these drugs with the ZY, whatever the fuck it names, people have looked them up and have traced back certain demonic you know monikers or whatever tied to them. And you could even flip it where they got that occult numerology behind it with COVID-19, or Divock AI. And why is the CDC posting articles on their own fucking website talking about some kind of fucking zombie apocalypse? The Center of Disease Control. Is zombieism a disease? Like, what is it exactly that they're defining it? And why the fuck do they have any consideration for the eventuality of that or possibility even? Have they watched too many motherfucking zombie movies, or do they know something that the public doesn't? Or whatever the fuck, right? So one's got to wonder with the AI technology, was, the needlecraft part of like the priming of some kind of thing where you can look up, people have, passed away from this, and there's still the nanotech is still active in the corpse. Things to consider. But well, I was talking more about the Cranberry song and the Divine Feminine, and how it reminds me of yeah, like and I don't know if she's like a got Celtic background or whatever, but in that tradition they have like the weeping women, something along the lines. I might get it mixed up or whatever, but y'all can look it up, and it's just like the grievance, and like there's a sisterhood that would come to certain funerals or ceremonies for certain things to pay tribute or weep over whatever. And that song is kind of reminiscent of that essence, where she's kind of addressing like the war stricken veteran a good amount of times, where there's all this trauma going on in their head, and it keeps repeating in there. And you know those of us that understand shadow work, the hermetic principles, especially with mentalism and all this stuff, law of correspondence, of how they're still projecting those unhealed traumas into their center screen of their daily existence, unfortunately. And it gets played out quite ugly if people haven't resolved that to certain degrees. So that's people operating on the lower senses still, and in survival mode, like the R complex of the brain, right? Think about all these things that correlate with just the domesticated, castrated, cut from the roots, traumatized human being. It doesn't have to be someone that was in a war or whatever. We can use that more metaphorically or loosely. That applies to so many people that have been under unbelievable fucking duress, coercion, and all these things, and the toxicity of whatever the fuck Walmart or any other place has to offer. Even unfortunately, some of the organic stuff has corruptions. I mean, motherfucking Whole Foods, they got GMOs up in that shit or whatever the fuck. Jeff Bezos, do we want to support that motherfucker anyways? Like, what the fuck, yo? We got zombies writing, and getting on chat GPT to create scripts to create more zombie movies and other replays and refried half-baked versions of classic fucking films to rewrite the script. We're living in Orwellian fucking times that can escalate to such a fucking crazy degree if we're not careful and catch these things, because we never know how this whole AI bullshit is going to play out, and how people are going to use these tools for manipulation and of our worldviews and perceptions of things, and even looking back at the future, and like modern audiences, what the fuck are they subjected to? I feel so bad. It's so sad, like the days of yesteryear, right, Chris? Like, fuck, man. Like Freddy Krueger, just seeing that stuff, that was horrific enough. Like, watching motherfucking like a Pet Cemetery. I after seeing shit like that, I didn't want to watch like horror movies at all. Like I was like, dude, I can't handle this shit. I was still young at the time, but just imagine, kids these days, not even 10 years old, having so much accessibility to anything at their fucking fingertips. And this is just a call to conscious parents out there. And yes, we're getting to, Halloween time, and we're still in the midst of Libra. So keep a healthy, holistic balance out there, or harmony, as Brandon likes to say. Keeping it light as a feather and all that good shit. Voila. Anyone else?
Yeah, man, Michael Myers, Halloween scared the crap out of me when I watched that when I was 8 years old, dude. That scared the living shit out of me. Like, it was
Halloween scared you?
hell
Like,
yeah. The
wow.
first one?
Yeah, see, I never got scared by that one. It was always Friday the 13th was the one that would mess me up. So Halloween, yeah,
Yeah, but I watched that
interesting.
when I was like 8 years old. My
Okay, well,
dad
I would
showed
do
it to me, yeah,
it.
and I couldn't sleep. And like literally like every Halloween, like I would have to tell myself it's not real, it's not real. But yeah, it just shows, like how this stuff can literally cause trauma in a young mind. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
man, a lot of good points hit. Rick, you pretty much covered the second thing I wanted to talk about, which was the collectivist mindset. You know, like you had the old zombie who would walk, with their hands out. Not everyone just walking out with their hands out and then looking down, like at their smartphone, like walking into traffic, like walking into each other. And it's literally so crazy to see because I know we all have experienced this. And smartphones only came out in what, like 2008, and even
Mhm.
when they first came out, like not everybody had them. So you're talking about what, like 14 years pretty much since, like since they became like widely used, and now they've taken over, so you have this smartphone horde, people just walking around, like with their smartphones and just looking down. And it's such a dangerous thing to do, like in public, because they're just, going along, checking their TikTok, checking their Twitter, checking their Instagram. You got some people who even trying to walk and live stream, like walk and record. It's like, dude, just put the phone down, man. Because it pulls you out of touch with reality. And that's the sad part is I forgot which movie it was, but you had the mom who was bit, and then she had a baby, and the baby came out as a zombie baby. Well, that's what we see now is you have these zombie parents, and they are creating zombie kids, and then it's this whole cycle of zombification, that's taking over the whole planet. Yeah, so everyone's looking down, forgot their phones, and like everyone's in a health response reactionary, like base, low vibration. And Chris had talked about this is the whole initiation into the gang and how it's this whole like traumatic experience. And like that's what I was, talking about with the whole zombie bite is very traumatic. Like to see a loved one, like how in those movies get bit or to get like ripped to shit, like ripped and eaten alive. Like that's very traumatic. Not only if it was to happen in real life, from like any other creature, but just to view it, because your mind doesn't know that it's a movie. Like the mind thinks that the shit's fucking real. So it's like, oh man, and it starts to desensitize you, to these very violent, images which man isn't really supposed to see too much. Like man isn't supposed to take up and watch all of these violent movies, these violent, images, because that has an effect, has a huge effect. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about when it came to zombies is, you have this whole idea of a reanimated corpse. Well, we also have that same idea, but in a different form of linguistic, in the form of corporations, the whole, court system, the whole legalese. Our whole court system is based on a reanimated corpse. That's really what a corporation is it's just a dead thing that function as a living thing. Like that's why we have the whole legal fiction trap, like this whole legal fiction slave system. And then they use mumbo jumbo, like the whole twisting the words and the whole word magic, the whole word game to deceive people, to get individuals to fall into this whole dead corpse functioning as a living, entity. So then that way they can enslave you and pretty much just make money off of you. So the whole term mumbo jumbo, it was a costume, usually a idol that was used by the locals to spread fear in the women to get them to submit. And that's really what we see with this whole court system, like this whole legal fiction system is it uses confusing language that is based off deception and it gets you to fall into the traumatic state of fear. Saying if you don't pay up, if you don't do this, we're going to send our goons after you, and they always send you this, letters in all caps, the whole corporation title. If people aren't familiar with that, then they really need to dive deeply and understand it, that there is two of you, hell, you have a twin, and it's all based on the whole zombie idea, the whole corporation, the whole legal fiction, how that was created when you was born and your parents signed you up. Well, I should say signed you up. They were deceived because it doesn't hold any weight. It doesn't hold any merit in natural law because it's based on fraud. It's based on deception. So therefore, it is immorally wrong. So therefore, you cannot give up your rights. You cannot sign away your rights. You cannot sign away your spirituality and sign away who you are and sign yourself up for slavery because it is always inherently immorally wrong. And that's where the moral relativism aspect comes because if we can't change what right and wrong is when it comes to behavior, then you can't sign a piece of paper and sign yourself up to be a slave because slavery is always wrong. So then, therefore, no individual has the right to do that. Doesn't matter how deception it is, it's always false in reality. And that's why they have to create this whole new idea of a second you as a form of a corpse, this dead thing who doesn't exist, but it takes on your identity, it takes on your name, and it takes on everything pretty much, how pretty much that you own, in a sense, according to their whole legalese bullshit fiction, and the corporation means the assumption of a body, a dead thing functioning as a living. And of course you have the word corpse in there. And then like three words that they use a lot of time in this system is depth, D-E-P-T, depth, D-E-P-T-H, and death, D-E-A-T-H. Those three homophones all sound the same, but they all mean three different things, but they all mean to be under something. So you have debt, like to be in debt financially means you are under and you usually owe somebody something. So you're still under, you're not over because if you're under something financially, then someone's pretty much has power over you because you have to give them something. You owe them something. You have to give them money or property or, time or your labor. Then you have debt, I'm sorry, debt, which was usually related to water. You go into the depths of the ocean, meaning you're going under, so
Or
are
they
you,
say 6 feet under, right?
yep,
Mhm,
yep.
mhm.
And then you have depth because if you have enough depth and then you go in too much depth, you go under, then it's gonna put you well under. Yeah, it's gonna put you under the ground in depth, and that's where you are buried. Because that's what depth is all about. It's the new currency, because eventually you work so hard to try to pay it off that you end up stretching yourself out, and then you end up truly under the ground, buried, dead. And then that depth gets pushed onto the next kin, and it's that cycle that like just keeps repeating. So it's the whole like legal fiction trap, which like literally holds no merit. And I think that's one of the other, symbolic representations that we see when it comes to, to the whole zombie mindset is this whole government system, this whole court system, this whole legal fiction argument, which is not even an argument. It's a straight fiction. Like it's just a belief system that literally has no power, but people buy into it and they think that you have to do it, but they don't understand the inherent immoral and deception that comes along with it because you could never truly hand over your sovereignty. You can never truly inherently write something on a piece of paper to enslave yourself or to enslave your own kids or to enslave your grandkids because at the end of the day, it's always immorally wrong. So then, therefore, you can't write anything on paper that can turn wrongs into a rights. And that's the whole meaning of, the pen is greater. The pen is greater than the sword because we got people to believe that you can scribble something down on paper and then they can turn wrongs into rights.
Mhm. Very cool. That was awesome. Well said, Brandon. I loved it. And that's what I love about this group, guys. I really do. It's so many unique ways, like angles that people bring in. It's all different. So that's what I really enjoy about this group is that we have, six people coming at it from different ways, but really dissecting the topic that we choose. And this was a good one. This is one that I think about, like I was saying all the time when I think about when I see groups of people just massing. And then you guys even dive deeper into that with the cell phones, and it just, you can really, when you start putting thought into it, really start to see. And I never even thought of, like, when you go shopping and you see the people around you. And I know in my town, there's even a, like, you drive downtown and we even have a street that we call Nod Alley because you drive down the street and it's where all the drug addicts are just kind of shuffling along, and they're like, they look like zombies when you look at them. They're just kind of shuffling along and they're all slunched over, and some are sleeping, standing up. It's really messed up. And so I'm glad that Jerry brought up the the drug side of it because I think that's really important. I think that that's something that needs to be talked about even more because they're giving a lot of people a lot of powerful drugs that are definitely having some crazy effects on people, and you're starting to see it. And it was like Chris was saying, the you drug people like this, you're so easy to control then. And it's like it's their perfect plan. Like, why wouldn't it be? If you can drug people to the point where they are and they're so easily controlled, then why wouldn't you do that? So this was a great conversation, guys. And I would just want, I'm going to end with saying, you don't want to be part of the horde, guys. Like, you don't want to be a part of this horde. And what's great is that we all have the ability to seek out information and to learn and to actually critically think. People have to start taking advantage of this ability that we have, and we use it. You can start critically thinking, and then it's like what you guys were saying, it starts with doing the work on yourself. I talk about this all the time because it's so important. You need to learn what real rights are. You need to learn what morality is, and you need to realize that they're lying to you. The social media and the social engineers are lying to you, and they're tuning into your emotions. They're manipulating your emotions and getting you to do and react how they want, which is, you have to be aware of. And I will just end with saying, you don't be afraid and don't be scared to stand tall in the middle of this zombie horde that's going on, and saying, no. That's our most powerful word. No, you don't be scared to be in the middle of the group and be the one that does stand up and say no. I would just want to end with that.
Nice. Yeah, Kensington, Philadelphia, that's one of those really bad spots in America that Jerry brought up before. And they have like live streams on YouTube. It's very disturbing to watch. And it's like just to see. It's like next level. Like discovered that a couple of years ago. I was just really disturbed by it. Um, yeah, I don't really have too much more to say about zombies, but I remember when I got married early on, I married an African girl and she came to America and it was around Halloween and then she was freaking out because she was like, why like people turn their front yards into cemeteries. Like what the hell's that about, you know? And it's always funny to like witness our culture through her eyes. And so I got to see a lot of like made me think like, oh yeah, that is pretty messed up, isn't it, you know? And talking about like just zombie shows. Like, why is it that that's normal? That's like normalized. If you really just like sit back and like think about it, like we need to imagine a better way of like we're not using our intelligence correctly. that this is like popular in our culture. Like, then what are we gonna get if if that's cool? Like, that's just weird. It's weird. Zombies thing is weird. But anyway, now she kind of woke me up, and now she's on the Trump train. So she became more of an American than we're not married anymore. So, but yeah, I'll pass it to Jerry. That was a cool conversation. Get people thinking about what the whole zombie thing's going on there.
Thank you, Jim. It reminded me of the whole situation going on in America where immigrants are coming in, obviously from foreign countries, and they they're just kind of causing massive chaos in the US. Like gangs are freaking taking over apartments, this and that. So that's what it reminded me of. And they love it because like government is backing them up, right? They're like, yeah, we don't give a shit, cause violence, we don't care. And like the people who actually live there, they're just, you know, getting their butts kicked out of them. It's ridiculous. And what I did want to talk about in my second round was about social media zombies, right? How because today, like I'm walking down the street and I'm waiting at I don't know. I could be waiting for a bus, and like literally everyone around me is looking at their phones with their heads down, and it just reminds me of oh yeah, like how the videos I've seen of how bad that is for you to just look down. Like we're not supposed to. Like we're supposed to look straight, right? So I've been in the habit of you know if I'm gonna listen to something, like I'm gonna pause, I'm gonna do what I gotta do, and then I'm gonna continue. But I mean, I don't walk with my head down. That it's really zombifying. It's scary. And the live streaming thing, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because I've seen that once, but it's good to keep in mind, like, you're missing out on life if you're too connected to your device. And the whole propaganda is coming through, it's coming to you through the TV, through your cell phone, social media. And before this recording, I was actually watching a video on a parent who he was at his kids' competition, let's call it wrestling, and the kid's about 2 minutes away from winning something very serious, and he gets a notification on his phone, and he just has to go look at it. And then by the time he's done looking at it, everybody's clapping, right? Because his son had won. And he looks at his son, and the son looks back at him with this disappointed because he was not even paying attention. And what I'm saying is like this whole zombie concept with the drugs, the social media, it's destroying lives, it's destroying families, the parents, right? Because as Brandon said, like zombie parents are going to breed zombie kids. And how long have we been enslaved? Since eons, right? So I mean, we got to break the cycle, and it starts by being aware of our these patterns, right? Pattern recognition, and then changing because we're going to change no matter what. So we might as well change our inner world, have these boundaries where we don't get affected by these viruses because they spread like wildfire. And then we can, you know what? Also, I thought of. Remember that video you guys sent? There's like two of them. I think I've seen the first where it's this one person and he's surrounded just by like these demons, like, and they basically tackle like they're all on top of him, and then
Are you
he.
talking about Kingdom?
I'm talking about Kingdom.
The one,
That's what it reminded me.
in Shadow. Yeah, the directors of it.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. Just we have that power, guys. Like, it's have to snap out of it. And then I might just end with a quote here. So let's see. Um, let's see. The zombie myth has been widely appropriated by American pop culture in a way that whitewashes its origins and turns the undead into a platform for escapist fantasy. Let's not use this media for escapism. Let's use it to put the word of truth out there. So I'll pass it to you, Chris.
Thanks, Jerry. Wonderful observations, and I like the way you put things together right there. Appreciate that. I also have a little quote I grabbed. Somebody named Stephen Graham Jones said, "Most zombie stories, the problems they solve are not the actual zombies. The problems they solve are the human interactions." And when you think about it, like I did watch somewhat of The Walking Dead. I remember when that came out and was keep watching it for a while. Yeah, like the zombie thing becomes just like a constant issue. It's like the normal buzz. But the real problems then are like the way talk about Brandon was saying dog eat dog world, the people start turning on one another
Great
and
point.
doing really malicious things to save themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the really sinister aspect comes out. And people that are moral relativists like to tout that human nature is evil and human nature is bad. People that like to advocate for political power and more laws and more military are the same people that think their own brother and sister can be the enemy in a moment's notice. This whole idea of people turning, you know, from one thing to another in an instant. Like you hear people talk about relationships like this, like, when I got together with this person, they seemed like a really nice person, then you just turned, became something else. It's like, so you never noticed, the indicators. You didn't have the discernment up front, and when we really like look down in our personal lives, I think we can really see how this works. And let me give you some examples. Have you ever been driving to somewhere you don't normally go, and then you find yourself making the turns on the path that you normally go, like to work, and then you realize, oh crap, I'm not going to work today, it's Saturday, I shouldn't have turned that way. But you're kind of in this zombie state of mind that you're sort of hypnotized, you're just used to doing the same thing every day. You've been conditioned into a rut. And that's exactly what society has going on a large scale. We as humans, whether purposeful or by routine of doing the wrong thing, have created ruts and routines that we do thoughtlessly. And we put ourselves in these positions where we fall victim and prey to like getting tickets on the road from cops, who is such a weird thing. You have people that are getting paid from my own energy who are out there being paid to feed on me, to tax me, for making slight mistakes, not even things that are necessarily harmful to others, things that could maybe potentially be harmful to others. And they're taking this excuse to prey on me. And in like, look at the movie, like, there's been a couple made of the soccer team that crashed into the Andes Mountains in a plane. And their situation is so desperate that they wind up having to cannibalize the dead, which is like the scariest, one of the worst primal, our instincts deep down tell us like that's not a good thing to do. You really don't want to be in that scenario. So what we're doing with this motif and the zombie metaphor is we're bringing that scenario to day, and we're imagining as if, nope, that's the state of mind we're in all the time. When are you in the state of mind when you can't have higher functions to consider the right and wrong or morality of things? When you don't have a chance, when you're in a last minute scenario, when you're getting into a crash, when you're overwhelmed and you can't reach that higher functioning aspect of the brain, you're in the lowest functioning part of your brain, which is the base, the spinal kind of lizard brain, it's called, right? It's not connecting the two hemispheres, the right and left hemispheres, and creating this holistic understanding of combining logical thinking and then intuitive thinking. No, this is where we need to be when a rock's flying at our head or there's someone who's actively trying to kill us. We don't have time for all that crap. Our brain actually shuts down consciousness and says, no, we're either fighting or we're running right now. That's a fight or flight. And so anybody that understands mind control or keeping people in that lizard brain helps give you this ability to kind of use your full functioning brain and think about the big picture and the context. And you got these idiots fighting each other and running around like crazed lizards because they don't have the ability to reach higher functioning brain process. How do you keep the public like that? With drugs, by poisoning the atmosphere, by poisoning the water, by poisoning their thoughts through the media, by poisoning their minds with political fervor, by creating miracles in time, and creating religions and false belief structures for people to bind themselves to, like a spell, So all these different ways of getting people separated from what's the body of Christ, the bread, is symbolically the bread. You eat the bread, right? No, we're going to eat the brains of the people. You're not going to develop the brains until they can think better. We're just going to munch them down. It's like a lower way of thinking. It's bringing everything to the lowest common denominator and forcing people into a pen until they actually do want to practically cannibalize one another because they don't have ability to think past that level. So, this is really an expression artistically that we can look at it a positive way. We can look at it as an urge for us as humans to review our place on this planet and with each other and ask ourselves, do we have the ability to transcend this low level of thinking and be shocked by it and be awakened by it and be like, wait, we don't want to be like that. No, that's not the type of hero motif we want to put out there. We want to be awakened beings who have individual creative selves that aren't following the crowd and dragging our feet and drooling and eating one another's brains. Instead, we're like looking for things to develop our brains and grow our brains and contribute to the individual differences and variances that nature naturally wants to provide for us, so I would encourage people to look for hope. Don't I think this is like coming from a burnout of people too. Like even in the truth movement, they're burned out. They're spiritually, mentally, physically burned the fuck out, and they just
Mhm.
want to give up. And that's the zombie motif too. It's talking about all of us. So I want you to take it personally. Be offended by the zombie motif. Let it hurt deep inside and ask yourself, is this where we're going? Is this what we want for our grandchildren? How do we renew the enlightenment process of pushing ourselves to this higher brain functioning to where we can zoom tune our brain antenna into higher thought processes instead of getting sucked into the horde? So, yeah, that's about where I want to cut it off for myself. And I open the floor to anyone else who wants to add a little bit and a last round, short round, but we're getting close to the end of this conversation. And I really appreciate everyone's, the slides you guys have put together and the thoughts you've put together in the last weeks. Really encouraged by the hard work of this whole group. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Ooh, yeah. It was kind of fun to just get off the track of just, the normal topics of, natural law and that good, right? Which, we can obviously apply because, we can see things apophatically or, just like the contrast of, ignorance or, whatever. And we're trying to, bring forth the undeadening because, we're pretty sick of, seeing people sleepwalk through life, just being a shit stain on the jaws of life in society type of shit. Like, what are people really aspiring to do? In, it's like, in the Eastern tradition, Indian, Vedic rather, of, where's their purpose? They haven't figured out their dharma and that kind of stuff, which, ain't gonna do much for their karma. But yeah, it's unfortunate that people are so distracted, like distracted from the right trains of tracks of thoughts and considerations for themselves and to really have proper gnosis of themselves. But just can't wait for Monday Night Football or Sunday, or now it's fucking like almost every day, whatever the fuck. Why? Because of money. And why is anything being produced now or being talked about? Because of fucking money. People are making shit tons of money, and there's like fantasy leagues and like all types of stuff where, yeah, it's just more screen time in front of the black slab or whatever kind of screen that's taken us away from the proper center screen, as Mari West talks about that in regards to transurfing and being outside of the fucking matrix, all that shit. But I mean, back in the days, it was more humble times, and we didn't have all this crazy technology, right? Just a simple television, and rest in peace to Terrence McKenna. And thinking about him and how he spoke about that, decades ago of, just he was talking about things like, your average American, sits in a larval state on the couch, at least, imbibing, television scriptures for 6 hours on average in these households across the nation. Like 6 hours? That's almost a whole damn like work shift, Like damn, like change the channel or cut the cord. Anyways, so that's interesting, and yeah, just the whole thing with people being hooked on video games. Yeah, I used to, play video games quite a bit, and especially when you get them dopamine hits and all that stuff, which is what I read. It's kind of contrary to acting. You see these people that, like, especially with just like with social media and this and that, and like they have such a cool personality in the digital world, but like they lack the social skills and they're not really animated or much alive, when you're talking to them face to face. You notice that sometimes because there's, they're, hey, like it's, yeah, like muscle memory and all this other, uh, entangled conundrums of this. But yeah, y'all mentioned, I popped in some slides of just, we're coming up well, like 2 months from now, turkey time and Black Friday or Whack Friday, as I like to call it, with the just like, yeah, sprawl mart, people literally like pretend, as if they're in some kind of rave concert,
Hey, Derek, is
houses
Spralmart
and-
one of those corpsorations?
yeah. Oh shit.
That is crazy though when you see people on dive through the door and trample each other through the store. It's like, wow. Yeah.
Brains.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
It's like, what's in your head? In your head.
Exactly.
Yeah, last thing I'm gonna end on of yeah, like I've never uh, been once bitten, and I don't know if you saw that movie with Jim Carrey, like older movie, like back in his like In Living Color days, I think. Just the name of the movie cracks me up, but and his like funny comical face, but like I've kind of seen, similarities with, the vampire and zombie tropes and motifs and all that. And, it just all goes back to, they need to feed off of other, life force energy to sustain their own shit because, they can't really, even deal with the fucking light, you know? They usually come out at, the freaks come out at night, right? Whatever the fuck.
Good
So
song.
things to consider, and like, oh, once you get bitten or whatever, or we fall off the path or what, or all that stuff, or you pitch a tent on the mountain of truth or whatever. It could be whatever degree. People always say like, oh, you're stuck halfway in between. Well, like, is it really that black and white? But that's not the point. It's the point is to not be taken under and be assimilated into the mob, into the cult mentality, into all these things that are just making people unconscious when they actually think they're being awake and conscious. When like it's the same thing with the fucking Matrix stuff, the simulacra and simulation. How many times have you seen like the same meme being shuffled around on and on, and like it's almost like a new type of groupthink. It's like almost taken away some of the critical thinking. And I've noticed and had interactions with people that I have respect for and consider them to be quite knowledgeable and aware of certain things, questioning certain, like, hey, like, I don't think that's necessarily right. And like people want to let the memes talk for them nowadays. Like, what's going on? Like, we got to be more creative, especially in the face of AI. We're the fucking true activated individuals. AI, like activated intuition. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna leave y'all with, and voila.
Thanks,
You
Lord.
brought up the phrase once bitten. Well, sadly, we all have bitten off that forbidden fruit of technology,
That's true.
because that's like the one thing that's, keeping the zombie craze going. And that's where I'll end.
That's very true. And I'll just add too that I say this so often is that we've never had the ability to gather information like we have now. Like we have the tools now to just access so much information, and that is my always been my goal. Is I'm always trying to learn something or improve myself, and trying to stay away from what they try to deviate you to, which is these stupid TikTok videos and these things that mean nothing. And so I just want to encourage people like it always does start with yourself, and you have the ability to seek out this information and start doing this work on yourself, and that is, I think, amazing. I think that people should really start taking advantage of that because the information is out there if you choose to seek it and choose to learn and internalize it and start working on yourself. And then if you do that, you're going to quickly see that you're not part of this horde of zombies and this zombie think you very quickly, or at least I did. And I know a lot of people I've talked to have, is when you start doing this inner work and really figuring things out internally with yourself. And then that projects outwards, that you start to really see the lies that they've been put forward, that have been put over top of truth, and how they
Propagated.
it's been propagated, and you see it very quickly, and then it's kind of weird because you can't unsee it. So then you start getting to the point where you're like, wow, and then it's shocking when you're around people that don't see it and they buy into it. It's a really that took some adjusting, and I still struggle with that because I do have people in my life that just they don't see it. They really don't understand what I mean. Like a lot of the times when I talk to them, they kind of get it, but they, in certain things, but they don't get the full picture. And I just think it's so obvious that what's going on. So that's what I'll end with. There, you take advantage of this time because we may lose it very soon. It's a very special time for gathering information that's out there, and they're doing their best to get rid of the good information and fill it, just swamp us with nonsense. So
Thanks.
access it while you can. Use
Thanks,
technology
Rick.
for good.
Yeah, like it's ultimately it's about valuing life,
Mhm.
and I like you brought up those In Shadow and Kingdom. I think people should watch those little shorts. And like every presentation I've created, I've thought a lot in the beginning about how to encourage the person to recognize the value of being able to make decisions, the
Right.
value of having life and being here. You're the newest technology of the universe, and you can change and affect reality, which is a godlike power, that the universe has granted to you this opportunity. So, value the freedom of choices
Mhm.
is the ultimate lesson. We can learn from the zombies. Don't become a zombie, and let's work on revitalizing humanity. This is a call to reclaim humanity, and we need your help, folks. And for that, you're going to have to face the reality that we're in and respect and value life. Don't be desensitized, because that's what they're trying to do to you. Thanks so much for listening, folks. This is another fantastic One Great Work Warriors tap link can be accessed. Derek has done a great job of putting together that. And so we'll share that link, and you can see all our past work and join us in the future. Thanks for coming.
Part
Have a
two
great
coming up next month.
All right.
Part two.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
follow this up with the roundtable. So hopefully some folks can come in and
That'll be
share
awesome.
their take. And if there's any more slides out there or representations people want to share with us, you can either share it through the Telegram group or at chris@chrisjansen.com. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good night.